team. Come on.
Well, I mean, hey, I'm totally on board with you. You know, I'll agree all the way.
Jerembo, Damien went live, but then froze.
I mean,
He's still moving around.
Oh no, you're back.
I was just blown away by that comment from Rob. That's all.
That's what it broke. Damien is what just happened.
Nice, guys.
The Apple campus or the former IBM campus?
Was it originally in the I mean, you're talking about the Boca Raton campus?
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
Nice. I am in the Apple campus all the way here. I got sneaked in. No one was here and all that. So, I'm still looking to shove in the
days,
the
with
NT.
COVID, there's not a lot of security.
Exactly. That's what I'm hoping for. And so I'm trying to make Rob's life easier by sneaking in the NT kernel here.
Yeah. The Boca IBM campus, there's a crossover combo like a OS2 Power PC edition.
So yes.
Boca.
So there are some people that when I used to work at Jane Family, they originally created a lot of parts of OS2 and all that, and they're like, oh my god, this is amazing.
They
like
did the
you
Power
said.
PC port down in Boca.
Yes. Oh, that's amazing.
God,
Yeah.
If Dennis was on, he'd be geeking out over this conversation right now.
Indeed. I'm sure he'll join us.
Yeah, he'll be on.
Yes. So thank you everybody for joining us. I mean, I don't want the conversation to start. You are at the Palm Beach JS. Jeremy, you want to say something about it? Since I'm on the Apple campus, too far away to speak, and I was
Yeah, so we're
freeze
Palm
like
Beach JavaScript. We meet on the last Thursday or Tuesday of every month, and today we have got a doozy of a topic for you. I know Damien loves his, clickbaity text lines. Redux is dead. Long live higher order components. So I'm excited about this because React is a thing I'm being forced to learn. I've used Angular, don't like it. I like Vue and I like Svelte, and React is one of those things that have been forced down my throat too. So I guess I have to like it now. So I'm very excited about this one. I know Todd is. Any React devs out there? Is everybody a React dev, or do I got any Vue people?
Yep.
I know Maria's in the house. She's a React dev.
React, yay.
Okay.
I'm thankful I never learned Redux because I know enough people really, really don't like it. And now it's dead, and I didn't waste my time doing it.
Yeah,
There you go. If you just wait long enough, it'll eventually just go away, right?
And Jerembo, I think at the last event, Maria was the one who gave a talk on React hooks.
Yes.
And so her and I kind of coordinated this just a little bit, where this should be part 2 in a way of her talk. So I want to, give Maria a lot of credit for being the inspiration for this, right? And she was, if you don't know React hooks, you got to go back and watch Maria's talk and then come back and watch. So go do that real quick, and then we'll go.
Where could they possibly see that? Where could they possibly see the video?
Yeah, you go youtube.com/bococode. This is being streamed on there, and all of our previous talks have been put on there. Since we've been forced to go digital, Damien has figured out how to get us all streaming and on the YouTubes on a pretty regular and consistent basis. So thank you, Damien.
Hello, people of the future listening to us.
Exactly.
I was going to say the opposite of what Chris said. I'm in a coding bootcamp right now, and I'm about to learn React, and we're required to learn Redux. So yeah, and I'm hearing about hooks, and I'm just like, and then I saw this up, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go check this out and see why I don't need to learn Redux except to,
well, Meg, it's good to learn Redux because you might, you're going to get a job in a couple, hopefully in just a few weeks from now, right? You're going to get a job doing React, and they're going to have old code, and chances are very high that they're going to be using Redux in that old code. So that's why you're learning it, right? So don't poo-poo on your coding school, right? They're doing you a service by teaching you it, because when you get out in the market, there's a high chance that you're going to be working on legacy code that's gonna possibly not be using hooks, but you can start to bring hooks in to the new components you build. And it's probably using Redux to manage application state. So knowing it is going to give you a leg up in the job market.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, you're the one that said Redux is dead, so.
Ian said that.
Yes.
Ian wrote that clickbait.
That's marketing. That's marketing right there.
That's why I work in the marketing department and all that. Yeah.
It would be more accurate to say Redux is on its
The
way,
new.
on the decline, the slow decline. and content, hooks are on a rapid ascent.
So I used to have in a lot of interviews, I would sit down there and say, what was your most impressive job? And I say, well, my most impressive thing is when I grabbed an old technology that was about 5 years ago that I did that was already 10 years old. And I grabbed that technology, I brought it to the forefront, and it was amazing. And I was like, because no one's ever done that. And 6 months ago, I had to do it again. I literally had to rewrite a website that was created 16 years ago in one particular language, ASP Classic, and then move it. And so all the time we work with technologies that are not necessarily that old. And I'm not saying Redux is as old, but you're going to have some decisions. Just be aware of that. All your life will be with the cool stuff, the great stuff, the stuff that Todd and Jeremy work in all the time. And then you have the boring stuff. Think of me when you think of that, because I have
when
to
you
do
think
that.
of
I mean,
boring,
that segues pretty
think of Damien.
perfectly in. Yeah. When you think of boring, go to Damien. I like that. But I mean, it's a segue into jQuery too. A lot of people ask me, is jQuery still relevant and useful to learn? I'm like, well, there's a ton of legacy applications out there that use it. So yeah, understand it and know it. So just because you're learning it now, it's not going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, I have to
get a
maintain.
job, you're still going to use it.
I have to maintain my our Shopify store, which has got jQuery. I mean, all over the place. So it's still out there.
There are lots of other outdated technologies out there. Like, I'm into MVC, but there are other applications that are still written in web forms, and I don't know why it's still supporting it instead of migrating to newer systems like Angular or React.
Because migrating costs money.
Yes.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. And by the way, that job that I was telling everybody how wonderful I did, and I did an amazing job, and the website looked amazing. They never used that website, because as I was doing that, I was fixing the old system, and what used to take 3 minutes to bring up every single page ended up taking no more than I think it was 3 or 4 seconds. So I worked myself out of the job. So never. That's the thing about it. Nobody has money to grab an existing system that works perfectly well, is instantly accessible, and can be run for a third of the cost of replacing it, and then say, well, we need the latest technology. A lot of times we just live with it. And there's people that still have great jobs because of it.
Well, I've learned that there are several companies that I've applied for, and I've learned still use web forms, and they're still waiting for someone who can maintain them in web forms, like some that offer unemployment assistance.
Nice.
Like Geographic Solutions up in north of Clearwater.
Nice.
Yeah. Palm Harbor, or is it Palm Harbor? It's in
opportunity.
How about all the state unemployment systems that are running on COBOL?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, COBOL was a big hit when COVID hit. People were
COBOL, COVID.
Yes, that's why.
Yeah, actually, I write in COBOL 19.
Right. Yeah, 29. Oh, I'm sorry, COBOL 19. Got it.
COBOL
1980.
Bad joke.
Very
Bad
cool.
joke.
So I see a whole bunch of new faces here. I see a whole bunch of new names. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. If you guys are not aware of the South Florida Tech Slack channel, I added the link in the Zoom chat group. I recommend you guys sign up. Does anybody not know who South Florida Tech is? No. South Florida Tech is a nonprofit organization dedicated to making South Florida into a tech hub. One of the things that they have is a Slack channel. The way they support the community is by helping out these types of events. The Slack channel is very, very, very active. I recommend you guys sign up and join the developers channel. it's very lively and active there. If you've got a question about something, post it up there. I guarantee you there's an area expert willing to help you out. If you see someone post a question in there, feel free to help out. It's a great way to give back to the community. A lot of times you'll see links from various things Damien and I like find interesting and post on there. And it's a great place to have a good conversation about anything tech. If you want to find a new gig, there is a channel called Gigs Hiring. If you sign up through Palm Beach Tech, southfloridatech.com, there's a talent page. Upload your resume, and it being a nonprofit, it has members from individuals and companies looking to find talent like you. So if you upload your resume,
upload your resume one time, James, just once.
I mean,
yes.
Exactly. And
so there's a lot of good stuff going on in there, and there's an events channel if you guys want to find out other cool tech events that are happening in the South Florida area. Since we're all remote all the time, there's no excuse to not to attend more of them. So without further ado, I want to hand things over to Mr. Todd Albert over here, where we're going to talk about why Redux is dead. Take it over, Todd.
Thank you. Appreciate the intro, Jeremy. I put in the, whoops, you guys can all see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay. I am going to not be watching chat. So if you have a question, if somebody can watch chat for me, like Damien or Jeremy, just because I'm going to be juggling a bunch of windows here. So it'll be easier. So, all right. Thank you guys. I'm Todd Albert. I put my LinkedIn in the comments. I put a link to a starter project. If you guys are wanting to code along, I'm going to actually like teach you a little bit about this and also try and make it a little hands-on. So it's up to you if you want to code along, but you can either download the starter project now or download it after when it's all complete and actually has context in there. So I altered the title a little bit of the talk. It says Redux is dead. Damien said long live higher order components, but if you're really savvy, you know that Redux uses higher order components. So what we're going to be talking about is how to create your own higher order components and how to use context, which is a slightly more advanced type of hook that Maria did not cover in her amazing talk last time. So what we're really talking about is context, which is a type of hook that you want to use. I'm Todd Albert. I'm the founder and lead instructor at bococode. Check out our website, bococode.com. You can join our Slack channel. We post jobs. We curate jobs for people like you, senior, mid-level, junior, UX, all kinds of positions. It's one click to join our Slack from our website. And you guys can always reach out to me. My email is todd@bococode.com. My partner is Ashley. She's on as well, Ashley Kays. She's also an amazing resource. So, and a great speaker if you need guest speakers for things like this in the future. So again, we're going to be starting with this, this GitHub project, which this is a starter I did. Basically, all I did was, use a create React app, so I'm starting with that template. I added React Bootstrap just to add some, easy styling and make it look nice, not endorsing React Bootstrap by any means, just picked one and went with it. And then I created a few child components because this is all about getting data from one component down the tree to another component. So this is what we're starting with, and I'll show you that in a minute. But first, let's talk about context. So, the general idea here is that we have like some component structure here, which I drew as a little tree, and maybe we have data in one of our parent components, like component number 1 here, but we need to get that, or we want to have that state or that data available to us in say components 4 and 10. So further down the tree, not direct descendants. If we needed it in 2 or 3, we would just pass it through props, right? Very simple, our job is done. But if we want to make that data available through our entire application or anywhere in our application, or through, to any component, then we want to use a different method, right? So for example, let's say component number 4 here is called auth.js, which allows you to log in and log out. And component 10 here is welcome.js, which provides a welcome message to the user if they're logged in. So we want to actually store that data in this component here. Let's say this is app.js, and we want to be able to access that. So there's several ways of doing this. If you know React, the one way is to just cascade it down using props, right? So you could pass your state down as props through these other components, and then you have them available. But this is very sloppy, because now you're creating these components here that are taking in props and passing props that are not being used, right? That have no context in that component itself. So like taking a user prop in this component and passing that user prop to a child, where that user data is not being used in either of these components. So it doesn't really make sense to do it this way. It's not good for modularity. These components become less reusable if you wanted to reuse these in other applications and so on. So enter Redux, right? And the way that Redux does this is it has a store where we can just store all of our application state for the entire application, and we can put data in there from anywhere we want. But whenever we want to put data in, it has to go through these actions and reducers. And setting up these actions and reducers and setting up our store can be a huge pain. And we're also bringing in a third-party library and dealing with that and maintaining it and updating it and so forth. So setting these up are a pain. Now, some people say, oh, well, you could just, create React app and then use the Redux template and it's all set up for you. But if you have a React application that's already built and you want to add Redux to it, you're setting up your store, you're setting up your actions, you're setting up your reducers, you're setting up your higher order components that give you the context, basically, that we can build now using hooks without any of this, right? So keep this picture in mind when we look at this. This is how we do it with hooks. You take your component that has the data in it that you want, or where you want your data stored to be, and we turn that into a provider, a data provider, and then any of the components below that in the tree can become consumers. And it's very simple to set up. You're going to see it's just a couple of lines of code, no libraries, and you can set up these providers that very easily. And it's also very easy for these consumers to pass data back up to the provider as well. And we're going to do that today. We're going to build that, just a very simple application. It's going to look just like this, except for one of these consumers is also going to be able to update that state in this top component. So why do you use context? You use context to pass data through the component tree without having to pass it down, cascade it down manually at every level through props, right? We use it when we want data to be considered global, right? Such as like your user, right? You want to, is your user logged in? What's their name? What's their account, et cetera, et cetera. Or did they choose the dark theme on my website? It could just be very simple, a Boolean like dark or not dark, right? Hot dog or not hot dog. So you can do this, you really want to do this to avoid passing props from component to component to component at every level. So, but I don't want you to think like, oh my God, this is the answer to everything. Let's just use context everywhere. It does. The components that provide context and the components that consume context are less reusable, right? The components in between that aren't dealing with the context, they're reusable. You can pop them out and pop them into other other applications very easily. But these providers and consumers they become a little less easy to reuse. So you don't want to use this unless you need it. Right? So here's a quick overview on how you set up context. And I'm going to go into details on each of these pieces. But basically, in my provider, I'm going to be using a method from React called create context. And that will automatically generate this, give me a provider to create a higher order component. I'm going to talk about that and what a higher order component is in a second. And then in the consumers, I use this hook called use context. So I create the context here, set up my provider, and then, so it's kind of a two-step process. And then in any of these, I could just say use context, and I'm pulling it in. And it's actually very, once you understand it, it's really easy to set up and use. So what's this whole idea of a higher order component? Well, if you've used React, chances are you've used higher order components. If you've used React Router, if you've used Redux, if you've used, many of the, most common libraries in React will use higher order components. So what is a higher order component? It's basically a technique in React for reusing component logic. You basically are taking, it's essentially a function that you wrap your component in that returns a new component, right? So you have a component, let's say like app.js, and you wrap it in a function, let's say router, right? And now it creates a new component, right? It's a new version of app.js that has additional functionality. So it transforms your component into another component that has more power, right? So it's like adding turbo to your car, right? You still have your old car, right? But now it has turbo mode where you can go really fast or something like that. So it's like transforming your car into turbo car, right? This is taking your app.js or some component and it's wrapping it in a function that gives it additional capabilities, right? Like React Router does. So if you've looked at a project with, I'm going to jump into an old React project here, and I'm just going to look at like, where is it? So here, just for example, on here in this project, I have my, I'm serving up my app.js here, but it's also wrapped in this router, right? So I have some router that I'm wrapping this in. So this is turning this into a higher order component, right? And then that is further wrapped in this Redux provider, right? That connects to my store and creating a higher order component of that, right? So that's all we're talking about with higher order components. You've used these before, most likely, right? So that's what a higher order component is, right? And it doesn't modify the original component, it wraps it in a container component. And why am I going through all this? Because context uses that. In context, you're going to wrap your component in your context to create a higher order component. And so that's where that whole, long live higher order components came from Damien. We're actually creating our own custom higher order component using our own custom context, right? So we do this through a method called create context. And I know I'm going through all the theory now, but then I'm actually gonna show you each of these pieces, right, as we go. And that's gonna start very soon. So there's 3 parts, right? Create context, provider, use context, right? These two go together. These go in our top level. And then when we want to use it, we just say use context. So the first part is create context. And this creates a context object, right? Like this. So I can call it whatever I want. And here I'm calling it my context. And I say it's equal to create context. And then I pass in a default value. usually your default value is null. So think about if you've used hooks, this is like use state and then you initialize state, right? So here we're just initializing our context with whatever value we want to start it with. The typical naming convention here is we actually use uppercase for this. And you'll see why if you know a bit about React naming conventions. We're going to actually turn this into a component name, basically. So we always uppercase this. So you put whatever context you want, like user, or we're going to use auth, right? So we're going to say like auth context, and it's so this is how you name it. You take whatever variable you want, uppercase, and then you add context to it, uppercase, and you get that. So like user context. And here we just say const user context equals create context, and then whatever we want to initialize our context with. Usually we initialize it with null because we're going to pass variables through this. We want to set it null typically at the beginning, and then we set variables and things like that in a different way, which you'll see. We do that in the provider. So that's create context, and this create context automatically defines a provider for us for the next step. So let's actually add this right now to our project. So I'm going to demo this. If you guys want to follow along, that's cool. I can help you troubleshoot after. I don't want to troubleshoot in real time because I want to keep going through the talk quickly. I know there's a presidential debate tonight that some of you might want to get to. So I want to get through the talk, and then I can help you if you get stuck on a project. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an auth context in our app.js of our create React app, the one that I put, that I showed you at the beginning. It's, if you go to github.com/Todd Albert, the project is called React-context. If you want to download the starter. So we're going to put this, and notice we export it so that it's available. This context variable is available throughout our project. We can import it elsewhere in our project. That also means that, so if we go into our app.js, right, that means that we are not going to put it inside of this component, right? Because we're exporting it, we export it out here. So we say export const, whatever we want to call our context, auth, right, for authorization, context. And then this is going to be equal to create context, right? Which I have a plugin for in VS Code where when I wrote that, it automatically imported that from React for me. Thank you. And then what we want to initialize this with, which is usually null. There's sometimes reasons to initialize this with something else, but it's usually best practice to start with null there. So if you don't have this, you also need to make sure you import create context here from React like this. So now we have this available and exported where we can import it elsewhere. And the next thing we want to do is I'm also going to import in here use state, right? Which is our hook that replaces our class component state. And the way you create a state variable, you could just say let or const, whichever you prefer. And let's say, what are some variables we're going to want to put in our auth context? So, well, we're going to want to put our user, right? And we're going to also maybe want a Boolean variable, whether the user is logged in or not, right? So I'm going to create a user variable in state, and I'll also create set user, which allows us to update this from, use state, right? And we're going to also initialize this with null. So when we start our app, there's no user logged in, right? And we're also going to create a Boolean called is logged in. And the method, the setter for that is going to be set is logged in, right? Only this we're going to initialize with false, right? So by default, the user is not logged in, okay? So this is our general setup. Although we do need one more thing. Remember, I told you there was two things. We create context, and this creates a provider. So what does that provider look like? Well, let's go on. So the next part, right? So there's three parts. There was setting up the context, which we did, and I also added some state variables, but it was essentially that one line of code, export const auth context, create context, right? I just added some state because I'm going to want to put something into this context, right? I'm like creating like, hey, here's this, this like global state that you can get from anywhere. Well, what are we putting in that? Is it going to be empty? No. So I just added some state variables that we can add to that, right? So in my app.js, I have some state variables which I can turn into global state using this context. So that's what we're going to be doing. When you run create context, it automatically creates a provider for you that looks like this, whatever the name of your context is, .provider. So if you have my context, you get my context.provider. And this allows you to allows those consuming components to subscribe to those changes. They need to be wrapped. Your components need to be wrapped in this in order to consume that context. So again, there's two parts to this. Way easier than setting up Redux. There's two steps, but don't forget this second step. And this takes a single prop, which is called value. And this is where you put whatever you want to make available across your whole application. You can put whatever you want in here, right? So this is an object. So in JavaScript, you can put anything into an object. So we can put methods in here, variables, all kinds of things, as you're about to see. So this also, anytime this value changes, all of the components that consume this provider will automatically re-render, right? So this is this global state that you're providing. It won't cause all of the child components to re-render, only the ones that subscribe to this. But the ones that subscribe will re-render just as if their state had changed, right? So this is really sexy. So for our project, we're going to create auth context, right? It's going to be an auth context provider. We're going to wrap everything in our app.js in this, and we're going to pass our state variables user and is logged in, but we're also going to pass our setters. So not only can our components below access our user value and our is logged in value, but they can actually set them. I'll let that sink in. I didn't see any minds blow, but maybe it's taking some time to set in. But that right there for me, once I realized that, I was like, okay, I'm sold, right? So let's see this in action now, okay? So this is exactly what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to wrap.
Hey,
and I can do
fun?
it.
Hey, Chris, can you mute again? Thanks, buddy.
I think it's, sorry. I can wrap this whole div, or I can just wrap, what's inside of this div, whatever I want. It doesn't really matter the way I've built this, but good practice is to wrap the whole, the whole thing in this. So do that, right? So again, I just want to point out what I'm putting in here. In state, or in this component, I created two state variables, user and is logged in, which will be a Boolean. I'm passing both of those down to any of the subscribers, right? But I'm also passing the setters for those, set user and set is logged in, right? So that in my auth component, when you click the login button, we can say set logged in true, and it will log you into the whole application, right? From a grandchild component, right? And so that's what we're building here, right? So now this app.js is totally set up. I've got my state variables, and I am broadcasting these to my entire application and their setters. All of this stuff I'm passing down, right? So I'm creating one context here that I'm passing all of this stuff in, okay? So now how do I subscribe to that? Well, I subscribe to that using use context. So use context is the third most commonly used hook. So use state, which I'm sure, Maria, you showed them. Use state, the most common. Use effect, the second most common hook. Use context is the third most commonly used hook in hooks, okay? And the way this works is, so I said it's the next most basic common hook after use state and use effect. So this allows you to subscribe to that context provider. That context provider has to be up the family tree, so to speak. It has to be in the component tree, or in the DOM, if you will. It has to be at a higher level. So your provider has to be above in the hierarchy your subscriber. And that's the key, is when you tell it to use context, it's only going to look up the hierarchy. But it allows you to subscribe to any one of those context providers. You can have multiple. You can have them at different levels. You can have them in different places in your app. They don't have to be in app.js. I was just doing that as a very, very simple demonstration. But this is, you create your provider, and then anything below it can subscribe, and you can have multiple of these. So, and you just grab it like this. You have to import and tell it where my context is coming from, but then you just use that context and you get your values. So this gets that current value from the prop, right? So remember, we're passing that prop value, right? This gets that value, right? Whatever we're passing in that value, this gets it here, okay? So for our project, what we're going to do is we're going to import in two of our components, in auth.js and welcome.js. We're going to import use context, right? Import that hook. Then we're going to import our auth context from app. This is what we just built, this auth context. And then in our component, we can grab any of these four, the variables and methods that we passed from auth context by saying use context, like this. So let's do that real quick. So first, I should show you this app before I make these changes. This is what the app looks like right now. I just have this header bar, right? Which is just, straight out of Bootstrap, right? Straight out of Bootstrap. And I have this login button here that does nothing. And it just says, welcome, React context is amazing. So this right here is my welcome component. Okay. And then inside, which is inside of my home component. So I did this intentionally. I have a home component that is this Jumbotron. And then inside it, I have a welcome component. So it's home component with a child of welcome component. And I did that just so you can see that it's like a grandchild of app.js. It's not just a child of app.js. And then the other child, if you look at app.js, we have home, which again just looks like this. It has the Jumbotron, and then it has the welcome component, and then it says React context is amazing. So this welcome component is a grandchild of app.js. And then the other component is header. And header is this whole nav bar, but it has this auth component. So again, a great grandchild of app.js. And this auth component right now, it just has this login button. Okay, and again, this is all just straight from Bootstrap. Okay, so right now, if I click login, it does nothing. This welcome component is just dumb. It just says, let's close these guys. Our welcome component is just an H1 tag. Okay. So let's add context here. Okay. Let's add use context, right? And where are we going to get the context from? We're going to import our auth context, right? That was what we called it, auth context. And where are we importing it from? Well, we got to go up to app like that. So we're importing it, just if you want to see my tree, welcome here is in home, which is in components. So I had to go up to components, up to source to get to app, right? So I went up to app. So now I have auth context and I have use context. How do I put them together? Well, I could say I'm just going to say let blah equals use context, auth context, like that, right? But what do I want here? Well, I can actually destructure what we're getting back, right? So what we're getting back, we're getting all of this, right? I'm getting user, I'm getting set user, I'm getting is logged in, and I'm getting set is logged in. Well, what do we want here? We want to be able to say welcome Jeremy, right? We want to be able to add the user's name. So we want to know the user. We also want to know if they're logged in or not, right? So that's what we want here. So for our welcome component, we just want to know is logged in, and if so, what's the user, right? And then what we can do here is we can say something like, like using a ternary expression, we can say like, if they're logged in, right? If they're logged in, then we could put their name. Come on. I'm sorry. Then we just put the user, right? Otherwise, we can say something like newbie, right? And then let's end that with an exclamation point, right? So now we should see, hello? Let's make sure, yep, it's running. I don't know why it didn't reload. Okay, I got an error. I know exactly what I did. I make this mistake like one out of every one time. App.js is exporting more than one thing. So I have to wrap this in curly braces. And I forget that about one out of every time I do this. So now here we go. Welcome newbie, right? Well, the way I have this set up, there's no way for the user to log in, right? So it's always for everyone going to say welcome newbie. So what I want to do is in my auth, I want to do the same thing. I want to import use context. I want to import, and this time I will remember the curly braces, my auth context from app, right? And now what do I want here? Well, I actually here, I don't care who the user is. I don't need to import the user. I do want is logged in, but I also want set is logged in, right? I want to be able to change whether they're logged in or not. And I also want to be able to set the user, right? And where am I getting these from? Well, I'm using context. What context am I using? I'm using auth context, right? So you can have multiple contexts in your app, and that's why you have to specify which one you're pulling these in from, right? So notice here, we're in app, we're exporting 4 things in our context. I'm grabbing 2 of them here in welcome and 3 of them here in auth. Right? So now what I could do is I could say something like, well, is the user logged in, right? And if so, we want to show like a button like this that says log out. And I'm putting a space here because it'll make it easier to read. And if they are not logged in, right? So if you don't know how ternary expressions work, it's like this is your if statement, this is your then, and this is your else. So it's just like a shorthand for if then else. So here I want to say log in, right? So let's just test this. It should say I should be not logged in, so I should see a log space in button in my app. And let me zoom in a little so you can see log in, right? But clicking this does nothing right now. So let's handle that. So I want to change this now. So we have an onClick function, right? And I'll do this for both of these guys, right? And when we log, let's handle the login first, right? And I'm just going to create an anonymous function here, like so. Shorthand this, and this is terrible. Jeremy probably wants to punch me. He would reject this pull request because I'm doing a multi-line thing in a ternary, right, Jeremy? Bad coding form. What'd you say?
Unacceptable.
Yeah, I mean, it might be better form to say like if is logged in, and then I can return and have, you know, some code here, and then otherwise I return this. That's probably better form. What do you think? Would you like that better?
Easier to read for these newbies.
Okay, so if you're logged in, then we see logged out. Otherwise, we will see this login. All right, so then we don't need that. Okay, so that's what I'm doing now. If they're logged in, they're going to see this logged out, and if they're not logged in, if they're logged in, they see the log out button. Otherwise, they see the login button. So what is the login button going to do? Let's handle this one first. So what we want to do is, I mean, obviously we would want some kind of authentication, going out, checking their username and password, but let's assume we've done all of that. So all we want to do is we want to say set is logged in to true, right? And then we maybe want to set the user. We're going to call the user Jermbo, right? And what do we want to do on log out? We want to do something similar, right? We want to set is logged in to false, right? So you're logged out, your setting is logged into false, and we will set the user back to null. So this is like the worst authentication system in the world. You click a button and you're logged in as Jeremy. You click the button again and you're logged out. But again, this is not a talk on authentication. This is a talk on context. So let's try this now. I click the login button and it says welcome Jermbo. And now it says log out. And I click the log out and it says welcome newbie and it says logged in. So what's going on there? What's happening? Like, let's put this all together, put it in context, wink, wink, right? So again, we had in our app.js, we created.
Sorry, I was a little slow. Hey-o. All right.
Hey-o. So in our app.js, we created this user that, right, you know, could be an entire object, right, with a name and an email and a user ID and, you know, roles and things like that. But all I did was just made it a string, then, you know, and then we have set user, which allows us to update that state. We had is logged in, which is just a Boolean, true, false, and set is logged in, which sets that. And then we used create context in our context provider to broadcast this out to whoever wants to subscribe. And then two of our lower order components said, hey, I want to subscribe. So they said, use context. And in welcome, we use the user so we can get Jeremy's name. And then we use the Boolean is logged in so we know whether to show the name or not. Right? And really, I could have checked to see if user was null or not. But I wanted to show you like having multiple variables and multiple methods being passed. In auth, we didn't worry about the user, but we did bring in set user so we can actually set the user. And I've done this where, you log in with Google or Facebook and it sets their user variable that gets returned. And it's just a couple of more steps than what we did here tonight. It tells whether they're logged in or not, and then it sets whether they're logged in, right? And this is kind of putting it all together. We had a provider component where we create the context, and then we wrap our lower order component into with this context provider, creating a higher order component. And then in our consumer, we just import that context that we exported here. We say to use it. We can output that into a variable, or we can destructure this right out into its parts, which is what we did. If you do it like this, then you would have access to like auth.user, auth.isLoggedIn. Right? So that's it. Hopefully that was really informative and useful for you. And now you guys can ask me whatever questions you want, or laugh at my code, or ask me why I did something, or whatever you want. And holy crap, I see there's 30 chats that I wasn't watching. So
yeah, there's only a couple of questions in there.
Okay, cool.
Enrique asks, what is the limitation of how big a store can you create with this pattern?
Well, considering, that's a good question, Jerembo, and I'm gonna just stop sharing my screen so I can see all your faces, because you all are so handsome and beautiful and lovely. Because it's being stored as JSON, you really, you're limited to, to memory in the client, right? So you can make it quite large. We usually wouldn't store things like binary data in there. What I do by practice is I would store like links to files or something like that if you really needed to. But I mean, I've made massive data stores, and it's very performant. I haven't run into any problems. So, I mean, think about a massive JSON file, right? How big does it get? Like 1 or 2K, right? So, how much context are you going to store? It's going to, at most be like 1 or 2K. That's like smaller than an image, right? Keeping an image in memory. So I think the sky's the limit on this. Yeah.
I saw that the limitations of browsers to actually keep the local storage index, DB, and things like that, that the database, you would think that's like 30K a megabyte. It can be officially half your hard disk. So if you want to
hard drive,
has your hard drive, yes. So
Wow.
if you want to save, for example, a particular movie that you pirated, got for free publicly because it's available, legitimately, you could actually save it in your cookies. Think of it like that, in local storage.
Geez. Wow.
So I'm not too sure, So I can tell you that that's not the memory, but you have space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
So we have 2 more questions.
Sure.
One is this the same pattern for React Native?
I don't know the answer to that, because that's a really good question. I would assume it is, but I don't know for certain, because I've done a lot with React Native, but I haven't, and I've done a lot with context, but I haven't done context yet in React Native, because I just haven't done React Native recently enough to use context.
Cool. And a question from Zane, is HOC, higher order components, the same thing as the context API?
Say that again. I'm sorry. I just got stuck on your comment that every time I say right, you got to take a shot. Right?
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 Is higher order components?
I had no idea that I did that. I had no idea that I do that. And what about, Is higher order components the same as context? Was that the question?
Yep.
Correct.
So no. Higher order components, anything that is adding functionality to a component in that way can create a higher order component. So Redux creates higher order components. React Router creates a higher order component when you wrap your router around anything. So when we did, let me show you here. I'm a very visual person. So in our app.js, when we took what we used to have in app.js here, these 4 lines, and we wrapped it in this auth context provider, that turned this component here into a higher order component, right? But so yes, we did use a higher order component. We do use, context uses higher order components, but not all higher order components are context. If that makes sense.
All bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon.
Oh,
yeah, exactly. So all, creating context, you use a higher order, you create your own higher order component, but other things also create higher order component that don't have anything to do with context.
Okay, very cool.
Can I ask then everybody to unmute themselves if you wish to ask any questions or you wish to make any comments? You're welcome to type it in. We'll be glad to do so. But I think it's a chance to open it up. Jeremy, you were saying something?
Yeah, I've got a question for you. Okay, so I like Redux and I like Vuex, right? I like the global store that's separate from my app, doesn't care about any of the components, the child relationships, parent-child relationships, or anything like that. Why is this better?
Well, so think about this, Jeremy. Your Redux, for example, which Vuex is very similar, but your Redux does care about child components. When you create your Redux store, you're actually creating a higher order component that you're wrapping your application in, right? So you're creating that store that you're wrapping your application in. And so you're doing the same thing, and you only have access to that store from those components that are inside here. So that's why you want to do it at the app level. And that's why I like to put I'm with you. I like having like global application state. So that's why I put it in my top component, right? I'll put it in my index.js or my app.js. So I have it available to me globally. But you could, let's say you had just like one section, maybe you have like a blog and then you have like a user control panel on the side. You could just wrap just that component in this, and then it's only available there. You could do the same thing with Redux, right? You can wrap your Redux store around that parent component, and you would only have Redux available there. You wouldn't have it available in the rest of your app. So Redux works very similarly. It's just, you get all of the benefits in my mind using context without a lot of the baggage, so to speak. Although, Redux they're still developing and they're still pushing things out, and they're starting to make like a new version of Redux that uses hooks and context. So, if you like those patterns better, they're still available to you.
So would you say that it's more of a choice at that point? Like, there's nothing fundamentally different between the hooks of the context versus Redux, other than Redux has boilerplate and context doesn't.
It's setting up Redux from scratch, I think is a lot more work. And you're also, the patterns that Redux uses are a little more complex with the actions and reducers. So you don't need any reducers with this, right? Which are, to me, were always a pain in the ass about Redux, right? Okay. Is dealing with your actions and reducers. Here, you can just set, like what I tried to demonstrate is we created state in a component here, and then we were using and setting the state in a component here as if we were in the same component, which is like, to me, is just awesome, right? It's like, how much simpler can you get? And, you know, and you have full control over what you're passing and what you're pulling in and what you're allowing to change. So, you know, I mean, similarly to Redux, but the pattern for me, the patterns in Redux, there's a lot more. You know, I always tell my students, like, React is awesome, like React, Vue, Angular, they all, like, you know, you just have to learn these patterns and follow these patterns, and then a lot of this great magic happens, right? And Redux works that way, but the patterns of Redux, there's so much more to it, like setting up your props and importing them and doing this and do it, you know, whereas this, it's like you just pass some variables as like these global props, and then you can use that anywhere you want. You just import it and boom, you're good to go. So
cool. Thank you.
I think it's more than personal preference. Jonathan, sorry.
Yeah, you've got a question, Jonathan. Go ahead.
Hey guys, thank you for this, man. Really, really awesome stuff. Wanted to ask, what do you think on your thoughts of I mean, I'm pretty comfortable with hooks, with the first two hooks, obviously. This one it's quite a little different, and use reducer is just kicking my, you know what.
It's ill magic. You're gonna love it soon.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to start doing it. It's getting crazy. All those use states I'm having to trickle down through. But I wanted to ask, should we even bother learning Redux or Mobex? At least get an idea, right? Or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question, and I think, you know, before a lot of you logged in, when there was just a few of us on the call, we were discussing the same thing with Meg. You know, Meg said that she's, you know, she's in a boot camp right now, and they're forcing her to learn Redux. And, you know, I think that what I was saying is there's so much legacy code out there. And even today, like you just heard Jeremy, he was like, I like Redux, I want to keep using Redux. They're still updating Redux. It's, you know, it's got what, like, you know, 2 or 3 million, I haven't looked in a while, but it's like a couple of million downloads a week for Redux, right? So it's not going away, right? Like Redux is not dead. It's, as I said to Meg, it's on a very slow decline, perhaps, you know, and context is coming up. But what also, I think that you're in the majority in what you said, Jonathan, that a lot of React developers are getting really comfortable with use state and use effect, right? And now you don't have to use class components anymore, and you're starting to build functional components. Yes. And hooks, you're like, yes, these two hooks are like your favorite thing. And I like, that was where I was, you know, not too long ago, right? And then one of these, you know, what happened, it was actually on South Florida Tech's Slack channel. Somebody asked if we were going to be getting, you know, do hooks replace Redux, right? And the answer is occasionally, right? That some projects, like when Mariela, who was, I don't know if she's still on the call, but when Mariela and I, when we create a new React project, we don't use Redux because we love hooks. So we'll use context, and we love use context and not having to bother with Redux. But the old projects that we work on all had Redux, right? So we're still using Redux every day in our old projects. Our new projects don't. But you also get a lot of new projects where, you know, someone like you who's really, you know, in that point where they're really comfortable with the first two hooks, I like to call them, right? They're really comfortable with those, but they're not yet comfortable enough with use context that they're still relying on a, you know, on a global state library like a Redux or MobX. So you see it a lot, and you're going to see it for years to come. It will be in lots of legacy apps and even some new ones, right?
Best advice that I have for that is find a small project. For example, I'm building a Futurama quiz app, and it's pulling from my API, It's got a couple of child components, and I'm building that in React, Angular, Vue, and Svelte, just to see what the differences are and play around with it. It's nothing too complex, nothing I don't already know the business logic for and whatnot. But if you're trying to decide, do I use recoil, Redux, state X, or just plain hooks in context, build a small little project like that and try to build it in all those different technologies and see what the benefits are, right? That way you can have a more intelligent conversation with the tech lead about why you should choose one over the other. As a tech lead in some projects, if someone comes to me and be like, well, we should use technology X over technology Y, the first question is why? Like, what does it bring to the table that this doesn't? What are the pros and cons? And most importantly, what are the cons in the sense of what pitfalls are we going to need to be aware of, and how do we avoid them? If you can't have that conversation, it's pretty much a done deal that we're going to go with my technology, the one I suggest. And the only way you get that is by doing. And again, small projects, nothing too big, and just get a sense for where you go from there.
I think that's really good advice. And it's similar advice, Jeremy, to what I give to a lot of my students when they're asking those, well, what about this versus this, or why use this versus this? I tell them that all the time. And the same thing, like you said, like the whole Angular versus Vue versus React debate. It's like build a simple app in each one, the same app, build it, using the same, design components, same CSS, same business logic, right? I think that's really good advice.
Can I ask just a follow-up question? Sorry.
No.
Oh man. Oh, man.
2 was the limit, 2 per person, right, Jeremy?
I gotta watch the debate. No, I'm kidding. Just a quick question. Man, you see, you made me.
Oh, sorry, screwed him up. Here, we'll do for the debates, right?
Oh my.
Yeah. No, I was gonna ask. Have you seen any limitations? Oh, nice touch. Any limitations?
Trying to turn myself orange for some reason. I don't know why I had the desire to be orange all of a sudden.
Any limitations on the use context? Like, how many contexts have you used? Like, okay, we got the auth context. Now, how about an order context that we could keep instead of keeping in local storage? How many of those have you seen and have you used?
I've got a follow-up question with that. That I've been wanting to ask is there any example graphs, like you pointed out, the hierarchy of like use context is up here and it's going to child elements and whatnot. Are there any good examples out there, diagrams that we can look at as well?
To be honest on that, so Jonathan, I'll come back to your question in a second, but on Jeremy, to answer your question, to be really honest, one of the reasons why I wanted to give this talk was when I tried to learn about context and using React hooks to replace Redux, because I had heard it could be done and I knew it could be done, but there's actually, at the time when I was doing this, which was several months ago, there was very little written. I couldn't find any diagrams, and the documentation, even on React, some of it was written for hooks and some of it was written in class components. It was such a mess so I really had to cobble this together from so many different places. So in terms of, I could share my slides with you guys so you have some of these diagrams, but in terms of finding any kind of diagrams like that, Jeremy, I haven't found much of anything, but I also haven't looked in the last month or two.
Cool.
Because I actually put this talk together like about 2 months ago, and then I couldn't find anything. Since then, I think there's been a few people have written articles, like some Medium articles, which I'll try and dig up and put in the Palm Beach Tech Slack. But yeah, very little. And then Jonathan, to answer your question, there's a couple of different approaches that I've seen. So one approach that I've seen is to have like separating your concerns in different contexts, like you were saying, like have an auth context and have an order context and a products context, right? The other way I've seen it being done is by having like a config context, if you will, right? Or like one global context. So as you see, I was able to pass variables and methods that were related to auth into my auth context, but I could have also, we could have just called it config, and I could have passed, you know, like the way that JavaScript objects work, right? They can have, you know, multiple things nested. So, you know, I've seen where some people will create a single context provider and pass into it like their product catalog, the user's cart, the user's, you know, all of these different, you know, having multiple different things in a single context. And I've also seen it where they just wrap the app in like 4 different context providers and keep the logic together, right? So that's a little bit of a style thing. I don't think that it has any effect on performance, nothing that I've been able to see or measure, but I've seen people doing it both ways where they kind of have like, you know, global context and you just pass all of your various, you know, objects and methods into there. And then we're more like what I was heading towards, which was creating an auth context, you know, product context, whatever. So you can do it either way. I think if you're starting to have all of these different, you know, the great thing about separating it is then in this component, you could say, oh, well, here I need my auth context. Here I need my order context. Here I need my product. So you can be pulling in the different context individually where you need them. But I think if you're starting to get like too many things, then you should consider combining, like, you know, if you have your products and your items and your this and your, maybe they all belong in a catalog, right? Something like that. So
cool.
Yeah, I think with my question, Todd, on the how big of a store can you make with this was basically kind of like leading to that, where in the project I work now, obviously it's a Vue project, and we use Vuex. So, but we have a lot of the states. You know, we have modules, so all of the states separate into modules, and that's what I was thinking. If you have these many, everything's separate, you'd have to then be wrapping your whole app into these many different higher order components, into another higher order component, and so on and so forth. And by the time you have like 25 components, then maybe you want to find a different pattern. And I think that's where Vuex is still valid in that case, or that kind of a store anyways.
Well, I mean, you can still at your top level have the context, right? And you know, like I don't have to, like I had auth in app.js. I can also have my product. I could have everything, all of my context, you know, wrapped in higher order. You know, I can have in app.js, I can have higher order context, you know, context within context within context within context. So I'm passing all of those context streams down to the entire application, right? The only reason you wouldn't want to do that is if you really had your application was set up into modules where in this module you need your product catalog and in this module you need your user, then you would go to the top there and maybe set those, you know, set those contexts there. But I prefer just having it available globally at the top level, like you would with, you know, Vuex or Redux or, you know, any one of these, you know, .x libraries. You know, you just set it, you know, with, and that's one of the disadvantages, Jeremy, with Redux, right? Is you don't really separate your store out into components. It's always set in one high level component and everything is, you know, goes down from there. Whereas with context, you have the ability to set up providers at different levels, right? You can't really do that.
I don't see why that would be a problem, but okay.
Right. I don't see why it's a problem either, unless you want to make sure that, you know, these components here are the only ones that have access to this data, and these components here are the only ones that have access to this data. With the way, you know, with context, you can set that context here and here instead of setting it at the top. I wouldn't personally do that, and I don't really see a lot of reason for that. But if you did want to, you could. That's what I'm saying with context.
So we have a couple of questions. Gene and Meg want to know about how do you think of recoil?
I actually haven't used Recoil.
Sorry, Gene, that was for you to ask. My apologies. I stepped on you. That's what have you heard about it, Gene?
No, just like literally like reviewing an article that came out in the news that I get, and actually like they say that they reduce, all the verbals part of Redux. So it's kind of new still. And again, like I wrote in there, like I think that is just something to take a look, right? Not something, but I really like this context. But again, I think there were people like talking about they still like Redux. And if there's another option, it's never, additional information that we can just like take a look of that. So, yeah, that's it.
Sounds good. Helen, you had a question. Do you want to ask it?
Yes. Todd, knowing what you know about context and everything, would you use Redux in a specific situation for a new project?
Really only if I was working with a team or a client that really wanted it. I don't really see any advantages right now to using Redux over using context. I've used Redux a lot in the past, and it's great. It's great for what it does, but I think that I think context, the way we're using context here, the way I showed you, it's a perfectly, perfect replacement for it. I don't see any reason to not use it.
Is there any reasons to stay with an older version of React? I mean, is there reasons to, with Angular, we have an issue with one particular version. So if you have the rest of the application with that, you might need to stay with that. In React, is there a reason to stay with a particular reason that wouldn't have hooks and context?
There is. I've seen in the past where like somebody was using some old libraries that aren't supported anymore, and in order to update to new versions of React, you would have to get rid of those libraries. But those are really rare cases. And this is, where React developers often will make fun of Angular developers. They'll say things like, oh, and we can update React anytime we want, which is, a little jab at Angular community.
Just to be clear, it's Angular 1, and we're at Angular 10. So if you're stuck in Angular 1, there's a reason why. I mean, and actually they forked. And so Angular 1 continued on. People didn't realize it and all that. So
yeah.
You broke off. Did you say if you're stuck in Angular, right? That's all you said.
No, not at all. Nice.
Thank you, Enrique. That took me a second, but
I waited all night for that one.
That was good.
All
Just
right.
so everyone's clear, Damien's our only Angular head here. Everybody's React review. So we got to give Damien all the crap about it.
Yeah.
We're clear. I'm the only one who has a job around here that doesn't require teaching other kids. I just want to say that here. I mean, I'm sorry if that's the case. So I don't want to stop, but I would like to before we go away, to not forget that we are Palm Beach Tech, Palm Beach JS, and but I don't have the Palm Beach JS domain name ready. So if you guys can join me here, I want to give away a prize that we usually do at the end of the thing, at the end of the day. This is not by any stretch of the imagination the end, but if you can join me here at win.bococode.org. Once you do that on your phone, on your laptop, on all three, you will get a ticket. Once you get a ticket, I will go ahead and press a button, and then we will choose a winner. Having said that, as I was, listening, and I was like, oh, I think I know this part, and then I'll just go ahead and check, how that's going, and realize this website was down. So I literally scrambled.
Because you built it in Angular?
I did not. This is actually on static pages and all that. So it is WebSockets, and as you can see here, this is me. This is you joining, and then me stealing your Bitcoin. I live had to hack it and things like that. So maybe one day I'll do that as a presentation. So it isn't Angular because the fact that it was pretty basic, and it wasn't complex enough to be Angular, and I wasn't doing a teaching session where I wanted the latest and greatest, so I had a reason to use anything but Angular. Is everybody won the tickets? Everybody gone to win.bocajs.org and to get a ticket?
We've
I
got
know there's
28
30 of
people
us.
there and only 13 tickets.
Yeah, something's wrong. Something's wrong. So tell me if you're getting an error or something like that. Do let us know in chat. Let me put that chat here. All right. Sounds like everybody else got a ticket. Oh no. That a couple of people figured out they could do it from their kid's iPad as well. So go ahead and get as many as you can. Only one winner. Perfect. All right, last going. I see some people still coming in there because I'm still getting some Bitcoin. So go ahead and join. Stop opening tabs, Jeremy.
This was not me this time. I'm not doing it this time.
Private browsing tabs. I've got 12 of them open. Is that okay?
Here's the thing about it. I know that this is the trick. So actually, the moment you disconnect the tab, it's gone from the list. Let's find out if that's true or not. Who has number 24?
I do.
Jonathan.
Wonderful, Jonathan. Go ahead and contact me at the very end. I'll send you a free, this is from the people at JetBrains. So you're going to have free access to PHP, Storm, WebStorm, Refactor for .NET, and a bunch of different services that they have. And this is our sponsor for today. So thank you very much for that.
It was not random. It was because you asked the best questions.
That's probably it.
No, but maybe because I opened like 4 tabs. Okay.
That's probably it as well.
Cheater.
So
we got a Hacktoberfest that fix. You led me into my segue, Damien. Hacktoberfest. Has anyone not heard about this yet? Hacktoberfest is an event hosted by DigitalOcean. Hacktoberfest. If you don't know about it, it's an open source initiative hosted by DigitalOcean. All you have to do is sign up with your GitHub account and submit 3 pull requests to any open source project. And you can either get a t-shirt or plant a tree. This year, plant a tree is a new option. Since I've done it for the past 2 years, I've gotten the shirt both times. I've chosen to plant the tree. If you're looking for a project to communicate or to contribute to, Damon, can I share my screen real quick?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Where'd it go? Hang on.
Also, is Jose on? Jose is not on, right?
I always like when people say that. Where'd it go? Like, it sounds like they're saying, where did my screen go?
It's in front of you. It's in front of you.
Wait, share. All right.
Can I share my screen? Wait, where'd it go?
So I've got a couple of open source projects. If you go to my GitHub page, github.com/Jeremy, one of the ones I call attention to is my sample APIs. If you have not heard about sample APIs, it's a open source project dedicated to teaching what a whole REST endpoint is all about. And we had a couple of contributors put some of these endpoints in here, and another contributor gave me a nice GraphQL link. So if you're wanting to learn about RESTful endpoints, what the HTTP verbs are and all that good stuff, authentication, sample APIs is the way to go. Check out the GitHub page and submit a endpoint and have some data in here. So anything you think is cool, I'm a big future.
Oh my.
Switch games, all sorts of stuff. So anything that you want to create an endpoint on, there's documentation on the website, and it's a pretty easy follow. I would appreciate contributors for that. Another one I have. Yep.
Jerembo, your microphone, I think, is cutting in and out a lot when you speak.
Doing that again.
I just want to let you know. Yeah.
I think it's your headset, by the way, because you're perfectly fine. Your presentations are always perfectly fine. So
I think it is my headphones. Time for an upgrade.
I think so.
So I have a question.
Can we contribute to that in open source headphones? Headphone.
Oh, nice. I like that.
Please.
Yeah.
You can GitHub sponsor him.
There you go.
Oh, that's the other thing as well. Yes.
I don't work on Angular, so I'm a poor developer apparently.
You mentioned you already picked to plant a tree? Like, is that already like a choice you make? Like, I thought it won't only start once the October 1st hits. Where did you sign up? Can you talk about that?
Well, the hacktoberfest.com.
Because I did sign up and I didn't.
Yeah,
see
same question. So I signed up. Did we have to make a choice? They
I
were
thought I
like,
did.
"Would you like to save puppies or get a free T-shirt?" And I'm like, "Fuck,
Yeah, because like when I signed up, it was going to ask me questions about T-shirt size and whatnot.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I believe I did. I don't remember.
It could have been. It could have been your past years, but yeah, that's a good question. I did. I mean, I'm signed up, but I didn't get that. So maybe they would just plant a tree.
Not only did I sign up for our group to have an event next week, and I didn't think about I didn't see that. Go for it. What's next?
Very cool. The next project that I'm very involved with is Code Palm Beach. We're a nonprofit organization dedicated to teaching kids to code. We host online events, being that we are still in the midst of the pandemic, and we are always looking for volunteers. The volunteers are pretty straightforward. It's someone to encourage a student to get coding. So when they're there coding, they're asking questions, and someone there you're just there to help answer them and unblock them and help them move forward. I get a lot of questions of, I'm not an expert in anything, so I don't feel comfortable teaching. Well, the good news is you don't need to be an expert. You just need to be a little bit better than the student, and where you're at right now is better than the student. They are starting from ground zero. They know absolutely nothing. So consider volunteering. If mentoring isn't your jam and you're looking to give back to the community another way, I have a tool called Cosmic Typer. This is a tool. Is it doing that again?
No, sorry.
Sorry.
Just for that Palm Beach code, I volunteered. I fill out the information. I paid the $19 for the background check, all that stuff, but I never got anything.
Okay, connect with me on the Slack channel.
Yeah,
I'll make sure it happens.
They were like, not that guy. Just
yeah, that's probably why.
Yeah, might be just a little bit slow in the process. We've had an influx recently, and so connect with me in the Slack channel, and I'll make sure that happens. So one of the tools based on options of mentoring students in session is they're from the iPad generation. They're aware of what a keyboard is, but they're not aware of how to type. So I created this typer, and the idea is to teach kids to type in the web lesson in there. So I'm constantly looking for enhancements, lessons, or just typing lessons. I've got a couple of issues open on the Get page where I'm looking to enhance it with a light and dark mode, looking for an authorization. So we have an admin area, gamify it a little bit, and all sorts of other things. So if you're wanting to give back to the community, I've got 2 great open source projects I would love some help on in the Hacktoberfest if you're looking for something to do. The last thing I want to state.
I think Jeremy's becoming part Android. I don't think it's his microphone.
Yes.
You're sounding very robotic, man.
All right. Sorry, Damien. Take it over from here. Tell them about speakers.
Speakers.
Yeah, we're always looking for speakers.
We are always looking for speakers. Absolutely.
Ashley, is Ashley still on?
Absolutely. Please, Ashley, if you want to speak, contact us. One of the things that we love here is we love to hear from both individuals like the experts in our next Palm Beach JS. Next October 27th, we're going to have some amazing speakers, all of them experts, some of them juniors. But one of the best things we've the ones of us who have spoken, like Todd, like Jeremy, has spoken several times, is that you'll find that it becomes easier. It's easier with everything you do. And if you're passionate about something, or if you just learned about it and you just want to share, feel free to give us, to contact me or Jeremy. We'll let you speak. We'd love to hear what you do. You don't have to be this magician that knows how to present everything like Maria that was, oh, I'm new, and boom, fantastic presentation as if she's done it a million times. You know what I mean? You can be a little bit nervous like I am right now, or you can be, relaxed and schwab like Todd and Jeremy are. Feel free to contact us any which way you'd like, through Slack, through Meetup, through Twitter. And then, make sure to come to us. We're always looking for speakers, always looking for great presentations, and reach out to us. The next, so yeah, in a week we're gonna have. So if you like what you heard with the hackathon, with the Hackfest, if you want to, contribute, if you want to show off your product, as Meg just showed me that there was github.com/Ruby for Good. Meg, do you want to talk about that, or is that a group we should all check out as well as something that we can contribute to? I'm an extrovert, and I was told always to give presentations. When I give presentations, and I ask the questions to count. So check out the Ruby for Good and all the other great groups. What we're going to have next week is the same meeting, same location. We'll come on there. We'll show you some of the products we're excited about. We'll show you how to contribute by live contributing some of the existing projects. We'll show you what you can get. Joseph will be there. Jose, pardon me, that will be there. That will show us some of the T-shirts you've gotten in the past. Perhaps, Jeremy, if you have yours, you can wear them or show it off to show us what's going on. There's a lot of stuff you get for the swag, as far as a lot of brownie points and things. It's amazing how much stuff simply by tricking, by trickling in things into GitHub every so often that you get. Me and Jeremy, and I think Todd as well, have code that's frozen in the Arctic. Because GitHub has put some things in there. There's some amazing stuff you get from that, and you get it all. And together, we're all going to do this together, and we'll show you how to do it. And then we're going to ask for your cooperation. In other words, you show us which project we should contribute. You show us some project that you're interested in, and maybe even show us what you're doing to contribute to next week's to the whole Hacktoberfest. Let me see. Did I have anything else left?
Yes. One of my friends was just frozen in the Arctic, right? You had to say that.
Yes, it is. He's pretty cool right now. Exactly. And so, and that's what you can do. You could end up being frozen like Todd's friends and be Todd. This is how cool you have to be Todd's friend. Things we do for you, man. Things we do.
Yeah.
So, okay. Thank you very much for coming, guys. You're welcome to stick around. You're welcome to take off to watch the debate. I think we all agree, no matter which party, it's your guy against that stupid idiot, right? Am I wrong? All right.
You're right.
Exactly. No matter which side you're on. So yes. We all agree with that. Good. Let's go watch the stupid idiots talk to each other.
Again, wait. It's your guy against the stupid idiot against the fact checkers.
And that moron.
Right.
It's your guy and that old guy. It's your guy and the guy who had work done. It's always that way. One day we're gonna have a woman in there. Bye.
Bye, Jermo.
See you next week.
Bye,
guys.
That was great.
Bye.
Hey, Damien.